we have spacecraft from another species.
We do, yeah.
How many?
Quite a number.
You're kidding.
No. I thought it was totally nuts, and I thought at first I was being deceived. It was a ruse. People started confiding in me. They approached me. I have plenty of current and former senior intelligence officers that came to me, many of which I knew almost my whole career, that confided in me they were a part of a program. They named the program.
A former intelligence official turned whistleblower has shared classified information with Congress and the intelligence community inspector general, revealing deeply covert programs that reportedly possess retrieved crafts of non-human origin. And moreover, the inspector general of the intelligence community deemed his allegations urgent and credible. Evidently, we can now look at old footage of spacecraft recoveries under a different light. Even bodies and non-human intelligent beings were allegedly captured, making this potentially the biggest story in human history. Grusch said the recoveries of partial fragments through and up to intact vehicles have been made for decades through the present day by the government, its allies, and defense contractors.
Do we have bodies? Do we have species of
Well,
non-human?
naturally, when you recover something that's either landed or crashed, sometimes you encounter dead pilots. And believe it or not, as fantastical as that sounds, it's true.
I believe it because of all the sources I have who have told me the same thing. So who am I to doubt these very, very high-level people who have been inside these programs for decades?
You're saying that the United States government has retrieved alien technology?
Yes, the assessment was non-human, presumably extraterrestrial, but we do have retrieved non-human material and craft that we have in our possession.
Do we have alien bodies?
We do.
If there's another species out there, it is a big deal, but what's the point in waiting? You know, like, I think our evolution, if we had known when this first occurred, when human beings really first came across them, and they had told everybody else, we would not be in this position we're in now.
What do you mean by that?
If it's revealed that there's another species out there that's way more evolved than us that we can't catch up to, you know, who's in control then? You know, who's going to get that respect of power? I think that's a really good question, tough question to think about. I think overall it's probably best for us because we're going to get, you know, we're not going to, I think we'll end up pulling together as one planet because we know there's something else there that's not us as human beings. I think that's likely going to be the end result, but people are going to be in shock for a while, for sure.
We already have the means to travel among the stars, but these technologies are locked up in black projects, and it will take an act of God to ever get them out to benefit humanity. Ben Rich, CEO, Lockheed Skunk Works.
The storyline basically is that there's a lot of work going on in the aerospace industry that would indicate that we have black projects that have gone even darker.
I actually called a spokesman at Lockheed and asked her straight up. I'm like, so what's going on with your electrogravitics program? And she's like, well, we're not at liberty to discuss those programs. And I'm like, really, why not? And she's like, well, it might threaten our competitive advantage. And I really wish I'd gotten that on film or tape. Because my next documentary, Tom, are you listening? I want to do a investigative documentary on specifically on anti-gravity in the aerospace industry.
Filmmaker James Allen died of an aggressive cancer 3 months after this interview. His death raises quite a few questions, but thankfully today, there is strength in numbers since many mainstream journalists are now pressing the issue.
There's no way that I can sugarcoat this. I was talking to a gentleman about the UAP report, and he contends the Pentagon has alien bodies and crafts. So I just wanted to run this past you. Does DoD have these things, and if so, where?
Jeff, the UAP task force is really designed to take a look at these unexplained aerial phenomena, try to help us get a better understanding of them. Again, I'm not going to get ahead of the report that the DNI will submit, that we are helping, obviously, and providing input to, and I think I'll just leave it at that, Jeff.
It is often debated that the only way we will ever get information about these special access programs and contractors is by giving immunity to the people involved. However, we can hardly know for sure how many crimes have been committed to keep everything under wraps. Here is testimony from Lance Corporal Jonathan Weygandt about an alleged non-human crash retrieval.
And well, we found the area really easy because there was a huge gash in the land where something had crashed. And it kind of like fluctuated, like you couldn't really, when you'd look at it one time, then you look at it again, and it would it's almost like it, I don't know if it was like alive and it was just changing, but every time you looked at it, you saw a different shade of greenish purple. It was strange. After we climbed back up, I think the DOE, Department of Energy people were there. I had all my gear taken from me by men in black camis, had no name tags. They were older men. They were in there, and there were other guys that were wearing containment, like biological suits, and they marched right by me as I was being taken away. They were marching to get down into the cliff. I guess they were in there to check this thing out. What do I think happened? I think they went in there and they took everything out and they shipped it back home, I think. The behavior of the people, yeah, this is routine, man. I mean, these guys are squared away. They know exactly what they're doing. They've been trained to do this stuff before. That was the atmosphere, the total professional, cold, unassuming nature. It's just, we're here to do a job. And they had a lieutenant colonel from the Air Force, and he told me, if we just took you out in the jungle, they'd never find you out there. And I'm like, well, and I didn't want to say, I didn't want to test him to see if he'd really do that. So I said, yeah. And he's like, you got to sign these papers, and you never saw this, and I don't exist, and this situation never happened. And if you tell anybody, you'll just come up missing. And I was at the same installation, but they had me segregated with Air Force personnel for like 3 weeks, and then after that I was sent back. They're just off on their own. Do I think this is a project that goes up through the government and everyone has a piece in it? No. I think these guys just operate on their own. No one knows what they do. There's no oversight, no control. They just do whatever they want. They don't, and they're evil, man. These people are evil. Do I think it goes to Bill Clinton and to the Congress? There may be guys up there that know about it. They're not going to say anything, man. If they say anything, they're through.
Rockefeller put together a briefing document intended for world leaders with a sobering observation. It is conceivable that even the president himself is not fully briefed on matters classified as above top secret.
I did attempt to find out if there were any secret government documents that reveal things, and if there were, they were concealed from me too. I wouldn't be the first president that underlings have lied to or that career bureaucrats have waited out. But there may be some career person sitting around somewhere hiding these dark secrets even from elected presidents. But if so, they successfully eluded me, and I'm almost embarrassed to tell you I did try to find out.
Prying information out of the bowels of an agency can be challenging.
UFOs? Any UFOs? Did you ask about that?
Certainly asked about it.
And?
Can't tell you. Sorry.
Just hours ago, we finally got Rubio on camera, and what he said, it is big news. Senator Rubio says Grusch is not the only high-level government official to come forward with these kinds of claims. There are others, he says. Let me say that again. Grusch, who you saw on our air, is not the only one to come forward, according to Rubio. Others have come forward in secret to Congress.
We'll say there are people that have come forward to share information with our committee over the last couple of years. I would imagine some of them are potentially some of the same people that perhaps he's referring to. I want to be very protective of these people. A lot of these people came to us even before these protections were in the law. Some are public figures, and you've heard from them in the past. Others have not shared publicly. And so we're trying to gather as much of that information as we can. And the reason why I'm being cautious, I'm not trying to be evasive, but I am trying to be protective of these people. Some of these people still work in the government. And frankly, a lot of them are very fearful of their jobs, fearful of their clearances, fearful of their career. And some, frankly, are fearful of harm coming to them.
The criminal aspect is far from the only major legal problem with disclosure. Once the world is told we are in possession of non-human technology, who should be given access? What company or institution should be given privilege?
Are you familiar with Commander David Fravor's account of the Tic Tac UFO that he encountered off of the coast of San Diego? This guy is a naval fighter pilot, and he talked about this thing that they tracked on radar that went from more than 60,000 feet above sea level to 1 foot in less than a second. Shaped like a Tic Tac, no visible sign of propulsion, blocked radar, actively jammed their tracking systems, and they have no idea how it did it. They don't know what it is.
Okay.
And these guys that were working for the Navy off the coast said they had encountered them several times. They didn't know what they were. They didn't know what to do.
What, do they have, like,
just did
photo
nothing.
or something? I mean,
they do. They have video of it.
Okay.
You don't really think about aliens.
No, I mean, if they show up, I'm like, great, okay, now this is new information. But we...
I can understand why Elon is so dismissive about UFOs. If it turns out these crafts are real, anti-gravity and groundbreaking energy sources would probably turn most technological industries on their heads. This is especially true in a very speculative economy like ours. Can you imagine if you learned a few selected companies got alien technology? All the other competitors would crash in a second. We're talking transportation, energy production, real estate, by making large distances irrelevant. And of course, aerospace.
1933 was the first recovery in Europe, in Magenta, Italy. They recovered a partially intact vehicle.
It's long been known that the regime of dictator Benito Mussolini documented numerous UAP during this time. This internal memo from the Italian secret services includes crude drawings of the UAPs.
It's true. It's real.
Yeah, that actually happened. The Italian government moved it to a secure air base in Italy for the rest of kind of the fascist regime until 1944, 1945. And, the Pope Pius XII back-channeled that.
So the Vatican was involved.
Yeah, and told the Americans what the Italians had, and we ended up scooping it.
Will superpowers be willing to give back whatever was retrieved? I really doubt the United States, Russia, and China would fold to the demands of their allies. I assume that could be an unforeseen geopolitical problem, or maybe an international effort similar to the ISS. I think that's the best we can hope for.
I think the second part of your question was related to UAP, or unidentified aerial phenomenon, and that UAP task force. I do believe it does involve collaborative inputs and information exchange with all kinds of countries around the globe, because I think these are not just solely actions or events that have occurred within the confines of the United States. They've occurred globally, and I think we're collecting that information. We're sharing information. We view that as an open and transparent effort and activity through the United States Congress and executed by our UAP Task Force Office. And so I would encourage greater collaboration and cooperation in that.
The President also instructed the intelligence community to take a broad look at the phenomenon of unidentified aerial objects. Indeed, President Biden conducted the first ever daily intelligence briefing session devoted to this phenomenon back in June of 2021. He was briefed that this is not just an issue for the United States, but one for the rest of the world. And as I said, our friends and our partners are dealing with this as well.
If the world is indeed being visited by one or multiple alien species, would we have any chance of defending ourselves?
Admiral, the Pentagon recently stood up a UFO task force. Has that given you something that you have to plan for as the head of America's strategic arsenal?
Lucas, I can't go into a lot of detail on any number of things that we're working on. I'll just offer that Strategic Command looks at a wide range of threats. In fact, I'd probably let this conversation get too narrowly focused on nuclear capabilities, right? I think the last NPR wisely acknowledged that you can have a strategic attack that is non-nuclear in nature. That is something that has changed in the current environment. So we're looking at any number of threats, not just nuclear, to make sure we understand them, understand what might happen to us, and do we have a strategy in place tailored to deter that?
And that includes UFOs?
That includes any number of threats.
Alarmingly, there have been military documents and a large number of credible military witnesses that came forward claiming nuclear weapons were either disabled or activated by UFOs all around the world.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Salas. In 1967, I was a first lieutenant stationed at Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana. I was a missile launch officer. Sometime in the evening hours on March 24th, I received a call from one of my topside guards, the flight security controller, stating that they had been observing strange lights in the sky making odd maneuvers. I kind of dismissed the call. He called back about 5 minutes later. This time he was screaming into the phone saying they're looking at an object, a red glowing object hovering just above our front gate. This object was about 30 feet in diameter. I went to wake my commander, Fred Mywald, who was taking a rest break, started to tell him about the phone call, and just as I told him, our missiles began going into what's called a no-go condition or unlaunchable. Essentially, they were disabled while this object was still hovering over our site, our launch control facility.
Here's another military witness recounting his account of a 20-ton lid being mysteriously moved out of thin air.
An alarm goes off from one of the missile silos. It turns out that the reason that the alarms were set off is a 20-ton concrete lid covering the top of the missile silo had been removed, and the chain link fence around the thing had been squashed. There was radioactivity around. There were two ways to remove the concrete lid. You either have a large crane that'll lift 20 tons and set it off to the side, or have explosive charges that blow it off in case one launches the missile and go to war. Yeah, it was off to the side someplace. It wasn't on top of the missile silo anyway.
Events at nuclear missile launch sites are not the only occurrences of the military engaging with UFOs, as mentioned by former CIA Director James Woolsey.
Were you using an analogy, or were you being serious that you had a friend that had an aircraft at 40,000 feet that mysteriously stopped?
I've talked to someone whom I respect who says that there was some event in which an aircraft was paused. And basically that's all I know about that.
Wow. I mean, you're kind of blowing my mind there. I really didn't expect that type of a story.
Knowing how militaries operate, it would be logical to ask ourselves if we were ever successful at taking down some of their crafts. While I'm very skeptical we were able to do so, there is some evidence that we did. Even Lance Corporal Jonathan Weygandt thinks the crashed UFO he found was shot down.
But there were big gashes in the rear of the aircraft, and what it looked like is that it had been hit with maybe a surface air missile. And basically, it doesn't have to hit the target in order to destroy the target. What it does is it gets in proximity of it, and it has a high explosive fragmentation warhead, and it basically explodes like a big shotgun in the vicinity of the targeted area.
I've been told that there have been attempts to bring down craft, that we've acted offensively against non-human craft.
There have been instances, and there are certain techniques.
Have human beings been hurt or killed by a non-human intelligence?
While I can't get into the specifics because that would reveal certain U.S. classified operations, I was briefed by a few individuals on the program that there were malevolent events like that.
I do think disclosure would bring the world together and could potentially help the planet by getting rid of fossil fuels. It's just difficult to imagine it will be a smooth process. I really suggest watching my video about alien abductions for context. People often imagine a direct contact scenario, but I doubt it. Unless some visiting species are close to our genetic makeup, a face-to-face would probably equate to us interacting with animals. You can have all the love in the world for a pet, but it will never speak, and the more you interact with it, the more it will become dependent. Can you imagine the questions and requests we would have for them? How to live forever, how to gather an infinite amount of resources, how to travel the stars and set up base. If they refused to answer, we would probably start to resent them. Others would look at them as gods. But one thing is for certain, we will always see them as non-human. I think the only scenario where direct contact turns out to be a reality is through space travel. Once we start navigating the universe, it is my theory that we will have to submit or go back to the woods. Thank you for watching. Please support this channel by subscribing, liking, and commenting.